Hi viewers, we are going to learn the lesson from the Diary of Anne Frank. The Diary of Anne Frank is an autobiography that was first published in 1947. Anne expresses her thoughts in a diary which was gifted to her on her 13th birthday. She names the diary Kitty, which she considers as her only true friend. She mentions about her childhood, her family, and lot of other things. Anne wanted to write a diary as she felt a great need to do so. She thought paper has more patience than people. She wanted to lighten her burden, and so she thought a diary is just like a dear and very sincere friend. In the diary, she found a real friend. She calls this diary Kitty. The diary is written with two parts. One provides a background about her family, her grandparents, and so on. The second diary part is recorded with an interesting happenings in school. She was very talkative in school. The detailed account of Anne's confrontations with her maths teacher is quite humorous. It reveals the lively nature of Anne, her sense of humor and wit. Anne Frank, a 13-year-old Jewish girl, writes a diary while she is hiding in Amsterdam from Nazis during the World War II. Margaret Frank, Anne's sister, who is 3 years older than Anne. Mr. Otto Frank, Anne's father, is a Jewish businessman. He left Germany after Hitler's rise to power, hoping to find refuge in Holland. Mrs. Frank, Anne's mother, is a source of many conflicts with Anne during the 2 years that the family spends in hiding. Mr. Van Daan is a Jewish businessman and an associate of Mr. Frank. Mr. Keesing, Anne's maths teacher, who punishes her as he gets annoyed by her talkative nature. Anne's diary begins on her 13th birthday, June 12, 1942, and ends shortly after her 15th. At the start of her diary, Anne describes her fairly typical girlhood experiences like writing about her friendship with other girls, her academic performances at school, and so on. Anne and her older sister Margaret attended the Jewish school in Amsterdam. The Franks had moved to Netherlands in the years leading up to World War II to escape the ill treatment in Germany. After the Germans invaded the Netherlands in 1940, the Franks were forced into hiding. With another family, the Van Daans, and an acquaintance, Mr. Dozel, they moved into a small secret annex above Otto Frank's office where they had stockpiled food and supplies. The employees from Otto's company helped hide the Franks and kept them supplied with food, medicine, and information about the outside world. The residents of the annex pay close attention to every development of the war by listening to the radio. Some bits of news catch Anne's attention and make their way into her diary, providing a vivid historical context for her personal thoughts. The adults make optimistic bets about when the war will end, and their mood is severely affected by the setbacks. Amsterdam is devastated by the war during the 2 years the Franks are hiding. All of the city's residents suffer since food becomes scarce and robberies more frequent. Anne often writes about her feelings of isolation and loneliness. She has a confused relationship with the adults in the annex, particularly her mother, whom she considers lacking in love and affection. She adores her father, but she is frequently scolded and criticized by Mr. and Mrs. Van Der and Mr. Dazen. Anne thinks that her sister Margaret is smart, pretty, and agreeable, but she doesn't feel close to her and does not write much about her. Anne eventually develops a close friendship with Peter Van Den, the teenage boy in the annex. Anne matures considerably throughout the course of her diary entries, moving from detailed accounts of basic activities to deeper, more profound thoughts about humanity and her own personal nature. She finds it difficult to understand why the Jews are being singled out and discriminated. Anne also confronts her own identity. Though she considers herself to be German, her German citizenship has been revoked. And though she calls Holland her home, many of the Dutch have turned against the Jews. Anne feels a tremendous solidarity with her aggrieved people, and yet, at the same time, she wants to be seen as an individual rather than a member of any specific group. During the years recorded in her diary, Anne deals with confinement and deprivation as well as the complicated and difficult issues of growing up in the harsh. Her diary describes a struggle to define herself within this climate of oppression. Anne's diary ends without comment on August 1st, 1944, the end of a seemingly normal day that leaves us with the expectation of seeing another entry on the next page. However, the Frank family is arrested on 4th August 1944. Anne's diary, the observations of an imaginative, friendly, sometimes petty, and rather normal teenage girl, comes to an abrupt and silent end. Otto Frank is the family's sole survivor and he recovers Anne's diary. He decides to fulfill Anne's wishes by publishing the diary. Since Anne's diary is a true personal account of a life in hiding, it is inappropriate to analyze it as a novel or other work of fiction. Parts of the diary were intended for public view, but others clearly were not. Anne Frank lived in Holland after Hitler invaded. They lived in hiding for many years to survive. Her father and mother left Anne and her sister to grandma. She was very close to her grandma. After grandma's death, Anne felt very much alone. She was gifted a diary on her 13th birthday and she named it Kitty. She made Kitty her best friend in her loneliness. She wrote every problem and happenings in her diary. She was liked by all the teachers except Mr. Keesing, who taught maths. Mr. Keesing got annoyed by her talkative nature, so many a time he gave her extra homework to punish her. He asked her to write an essay on a chatterbox as punishment. Anne wrote the essay on quack, 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 which humiliated Mr. Keesing. He allowed her to talk and relieved her from any extra homework. Hi viewers, by reading this lesson, we understand that we should try to be more accommodating and tolerant. If we try to force anyone to follow our line, that would lead to unpleasant ending.